Okay, let's move along. So we've now got a random list of people, and we've also assigned random ranks. Um, Here, let's shake it one more time. There we go. Um, so the idea is going to be that we're not going to show these ranks. These ranks are the final position after we've done our sort. So we want to start in one random order and end up in a different random order. So, so as soon as you shake it, it starts random, and then we get to a different random order. So, for example, in this list, Inky would end up at the top, and Clyde would be in second place, and you can guess the rest. So, to do this, we want to write a little sort algorithm, and it doesn't have to be particularly efficient. In fact, the very familiar bubble sort algorithm, which is known to be tremendously inefficient, is great for what we want to do, because we want to see things moving like this in the list. We want to see things moving up and moving down, and that's exactly what bubble sort tends to do, is to make things look like they're moving up and moving down just by swapping pairs. So let's go ahead and do this now. Second thing is I'm not going to write a full bubble sort. What I want to do is I want to look at this array, and I want to work out what the next swap needs to be. And the reason why I want to do that is because we want to use this twice. The first time when we call this, we're going to call it over and over again to figure out, hey, what do I need to swap, what do I need to swap, what do I need to swap. And we're going to count how many times we need to swap so that we know how many times we need to swap this in order for it to be totally sorted. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to do that. And the reason why we need to know the number of times we're going to swap is so that we can synchronize with the amount of time that we have, which is something I alluded to just earlier. So, in our big plan. So let's go ahead and do this. So this shouldn't be too hard. Let's start by creating a bubble sorter for us. So I will say Ionic, G for generate, provider, and we'll just say bubble sort. And that will go off, and it'll just create the skeleton class for a bubble sort provider, and add it into the system. As a matter of fact, we can go over here and see the changes, and here's our empty bubble sort class, and here's the changes it made into the app module. It said, hey, it's a provider, it's available, it's injectable. So let's go to bubble sort, and we don't need our console line. But what we do need, well, actually we don't need the console line, and we don't need this HTTP bit, and we don't need this HTTP bit. But what we do need is something that will do the next swap for us. So let's create a method called do next swap. Okay, and what does it need? It needs the input data. So I'll say data. And what is our input data? It's an array of people. But actually, we don't want this to know about people, so I'm going to be a little more correct than making this know about people. I'm going to say I'm going to use an interface, and I'm going to create something called a rankable. So a rankable object is anything that has a rank member that is optional and is a number. That should work. And wouldn't you know it, our people have exactly that property. So we can pass an array of people in, and it'll do the next swap for us. So here I'll say we want rankable array. Right? We want a rankable array, if I could type properly. There we go, as input. And I'm actually going to leave the output empty because it could be one of two things, and it's just easier to just don't even say it. So here's what this method is going to do. It's going to try to figure out what the next swap should be, and if it finds a swap, it's going to return the new the array in the new orientation. But if it doesn't find a swap, it'll return null, and that way we can easily count how many times is required to totally sort the array, and we can also sort the array. That works for me. So, and we do have options here. We could do something more elaborate where we return a tuple, but for our purposes, this will work. So let's begin. We'll start by saying let, actually we want a for statement here, so we want to say for, and what do we want to start with? We want to start at the very bottom of our array. So I'll say let I equals data.length. Okay, and we want the bottom element, so I'll say -1, and that's the bottom element. And we're going to execute this loop while I is greater than or equal to 1. And let me think about that for a second. Yes, that'll make sense. Okay, there's a reason why it's 1 and not 0, and that'll become apparent in a second. Next thing is as we go through this loop, we want it to decrement, not increment. Okay, so we're starting with I at the bottom, and we're working our way up to the I equals 1 position. Now we're also going to have another variable called j, and it's going to be at I -1. And that's why we stop at 1, so that j will be 0. Cool. Next thing we want to do, let's get the data at the ith and the jth element. So we'll say let di equals data I, and let dj equals data j. Okay. And then it's very simple for us to do a little check. We can say if di.rank is, let's see, if what's in the bottom is, we want the big thing on the bottom. So if what's in the bottom is smaller than the jth element, so I go di is less than dj.rank, then we need to swap them. Hope that makes sense. So yes, if di is less than dj, then we need to swap these two elements. And how do we swap them? We go data.I is equal to dj, and oh, come on, autocomplete. dj, don't autocomplete that for me, thank you. And data bracket j is equal to di, and don't autocomplete that. Does that look right? Yeah, that looks right to me. So we're swapping those two things. And then finally, since we detected something that needs a swap, we can just return right here. We can say return data. Another thing I want to mention is you'll notice I'm not using semicolons. I'm trying out both styles. TypeScript doesn't need semicolons at the end, so some of the times, I'm a little inconsistent right now, but actually I think this is easier on my eyes, so maybe that's a good thing. So if we make it through every single pass of this loop and we haven't found something to swap, then we need to do something different. We'll return null, indicating that we hit the end of the array. Now I can see I've got some kind of an error happening here. At least I think so. So maybe we'll see something pop up over here. Not seeing anything. It might just be a Visual Studio Code glitch. So one thing I want to mention is when we have a function like this that returns, two possible things, it's a good place to actually document it. So I'm just going to say this returns the data after one swap, or if no swaps are required, then null is returned. Okay, So I'm not going to get too elaborate, but that basically says it all. If I was trying to remember what the heck I'm doing in this function, that would tell me what I need to know. Things look pretty good on the compiling front. I'm not seeing any errors, so I'm going to assume this is just Visual Studio being a little silly. Let's actually use this. So let's go to Home, and let's bring in our provider. So we'll say private bubble sort SVC is equal to a bubble sort provider. Cool. And now we can do something fun. So just to review here, when you click Shake It, currently we take the array of people and we shuffle in some random order. Then we assign random ranks to those people. Now, just for testing purposes, I'm going to, and actually before I do this, no, that's good enough. What I want to do is actually run the bubble sort at this point, and just run the bubble sort till it's done. And then if we've got this right, we should see everyone in ranked order. So let's give that a shot. And if something goes wrong, we'll do some debugging. So we'll say the following. We'll say let data equals null. Just so I can then go while data equals, then we're going to call this dot bubble sort service dot, and I think we have a what's the name of the method? Do next swap. Do next swap is the method we want to call. So sorry about switching screens there. Back to home. I just couldn't remember what we call that method. I'll just type it in. Do next swap. Now I'm a little suspicious that I got something wrong, because I'm not getting auto completion on that. Always a good sign. It's looking okay. So let's see. Do next swap. We need to pass in the people. So here's where our clever design comes in. First of all, so this will do the next swap. So it's got our array and it'll do one swap. And it'll return one of two things. It'll return null if we're done, or it will return the new array if we're not done. So that's why we can stick this in the while statement. This is basically checking for truthiness. This will continue to execute as long as we're not done. Hope that makes sense. But if we aren't done, what we want to do is whatever data we got back, that's the new array. Okay, so that makes sense to me. Let's see if it makes sense to the compiler. And it doesn't make sense to the compiler yet. So what did I do wrong? Aha! Just a typo. Well, so far it's just a typo. Let's try that. Okay, what's this talking about now? Cannot provide bubbles. This is odd. Bubble sort provider. Well, bubble sort provider I thought was injected into our list of providers. Sure, looks like it is. Let's check that it's been imported properly. Oh, I bet doesn't. I don't see a change up here, or maybe. Let's see. I see one red line. Yeah, I don't see bubble sort provider actually getting injected. So let's just close the comparison. Let's open this file So this looks like a pretty simple problem. I had assumed that this would get automatically imported, but it didn't, and I'm not sure why. I don't see it listed up here. Okay, we'll list it up here. So we've already got a people provider. Let's go import something from /providers. Okay. And can I get some auto completion, please? Thank you. Bubble sort. Bubble sort. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I bet you if I autocomplete on this, bubble sort provider. Nice. Okay, I have no idea why it didn't auto import that time, but let's just go with the flow. Alright, it's back. So compiled everything up. Webpack sure takes a long time sometimes. So, cool. Do I risk clicking the shake it button? So, here's something. If we've got anything wrong, this is a pretty, we've got a loop we got a fairly tight loop, and if we messed anything up, it's basically going to hang. We could put a breakpoint in there, or we could just try it out and see if it works. Let's try it out. Yay! Wow, I'm surprised. Okay, so worked first time. Looks like we didn't make any big mistakes. So, nice, that's exactly what we were hoping were happening. Remember before, we randomized the order, then we assigned random ranks, and now we're sorting them based on those ranks. So, that looks pretty good. Okay, and this is the next step in our journey. So now we can do a little bit of math and do a little bit of animation, do things a little more slowly, and we'll get a bit of an animated effects happening. But that's coming up next. Thank you very much.